On behalf of MyTech, I want to thank everybody today for joining the Pottery Talk with Amy Shinerock. We're thrilled to have Amy here today. Amy has been a potter for over 40 years, and she's going to give a beautiful, calming, meditative look at pottery. And we'll talk about the Japanese influence that's played a role in her pottery. Amy will discuss the difference between oxidation and reduction firings, and will demonstrate the three basic ways of working with clay, slab building, coils, and using the wheel. So without further ado, Amy, if you could take us away to the beautiful and calming meditative world of pottery.
Hi, yeah, I'm Amy Shinerock. Welcome to my studio. And Diane just said everything I was going to say in my introduction, so I have nothing else to say. But I will share with you today some of my love of pottery. And I think what I'll do first is just take you on a quick little tour of my studio so you know the context that we're going to be in today. So here we go. Here's my wheel, as you could see. And this is all my shelves of pottery, my work table. And then we move over here to the glazing area. And here's the kiln, the drying rooms. And over here are all of my glaze materials and the mixed glazes. So now we'll come back and make sure that you can see me well again.
And if you can tilt it just a little to the left.
To the, this way?
To
you
your
mean?
right, I think. Yes,
Yeah,
that way.
that's what I thought.
And now we can see your pottery wheel exactly well. So do you want to take a seat at your pottery wheel?
Sure.
And present from there?
Thank you. Okay. So
No problem.
I got into pottery in a funny way by accident way back 40 years ago or so. I was an art major at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, living in Brooklyn. And I was there for several years. And at the time, the School of Visual Arts didn't give a degree. So I decided I needed a degree. So I went to City College. Did the, standard course in economics and history and all that. But at one point I had a little 3-credit gap that I needed to fill. And I took a pottery course, which I had never done. They didn't even offer it back at the School of Visual Arts. So I took this pottery course and it changed my life. And now 40 some years later, here I am again. So I'm living in Brooklyn, and at some point, because we had a gas kiln at City College, I decided I really needed to build my own gas kiln in my backyard. I was in a ground floor apartment in Boerum Hill. And I was working at a bar in Brooklyn Heights, and just at the end of the street was the Brooklyn Union Gas Company. So all those guys used to come to my bar to drink. And so I was sort of friends with them. And somehow I got them to go to the whole gas company and come to my street in Brooklyn, dig up the street and replace the gas pipes that were standard for homes with great big gas pipes that could bring enough gas in to fire a kiln. And they did it. It happened. Could never happen today, but somehow it happened, and I built my gas kiln. And then I became friends with a couple of women who were starting a pottery studio on Atlantic Avenue, which was near where I lived. And I joined with them, and we opened a studio for teaching, and in the front we sold our pottery. We did that for several years, had my first few shows in New York and Brooklyn. And then I had the amazing opportunity to go to Japan. And it was there that I fell in love with Japanese ware, particularly something called Bizen ware, which is wood-fired pottery. Bizen is a town in Japan. And we were able to actually visit some of these kilns and other kilns in other areas too. And Bizen ware and Japanese tea ware in general became a huge influence for me. When we came back to America, we were living in the Catskills and we built a wood burning kiln. And that was the real highlight of my entire pottery life, was those few years of using that wood burning kiln. It would take days to fire it. The whole community of people who lived near us would come and help. And it was just party time for a couple of days. And then this amazing result of wood-fired pottery would come out. And then we started having babies, and that was kind of the end of pottery for about 15 years. And by then we had moved to New Hampshire, next door to a community that took care of handicapped people. And I started doing pottery with them. So this is 15 years later, and I just fell in love with it all over again. And so I've been doing it ever since. So today I want to show you, I think first I'll show you wheel throwing, because that's kind of the most exciting. And then, as Diane said, I'll show you some slab building and some coil building. So now we have to come over here to my wedging board. Is that okay?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Good, okay. I'm going to take a hunk of clay. So this is how it comes to me from the clay company. And it's what's called pre-wedged, but besides that, you always have to wedge the clay a little more because there are air bubbles in it, and air will expand under heat in the kiln way faster than the clay, and that will cause the pot to explode. Kiln disaster. So I am pushing the clay in on itself to get whatever air bubbles might still be in there to be squished. And ordinarily I would do it a little longer, but hopefully I did a good enough job. So I round it as best I can. And then back to the wheel. Is that about right?
A little bit further. Keep going. That's perfect.
Okay. So here's my mound of clay. I'm going to center it as much as I can by sight. And this wheel, as most wheels these days are, has a pedal, which I'm not going to move the camera again, but it's down here by my foot, and it makes, I can control the speed of the wheel very easily. So the next important thing after getting air bubbles out is centering your clay. So I'm going to brace my left arm, my elbow, into my hip to try and keep it from wobbling with the off-center clay. And my right hand is just kind of guiding it. I'm applying a fair amount of pressure right now. And I guess we could say that centering is really a metaphor for life. If you don't start from a centered place, you're very likely not to have too good a result afterwards. So very humble task, but very important to center the clay. Getting there. Okay, that's pretty good. So then I take my right hand, get my thumb to be absolutely still and not wobbly. And I'm going to support my right thumb with my left thumb and begin to push down. And this is going to be the inside of my cup. Ideally, you want to push down so that there's a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch of clay at the bottom. And you just learn that by trial and error. If you leave too much clay, you're going to have a very thick bottom that you have to trim off, which isn't the end of the world. But if you push down too far, you have no bottom. And that is more the end of the world than too much clay. Then I take my left hand after I've gotten a nice little inside beginning, left hand, and I'm going to begin to push out into my right hand to widen the inner wall of the pot and then come up. Pushing with my left hand into my receiving right hand. Left hand pushing hard. And now coming up. And once you get it a little wider, sometimes it helps to take a sponge and push out using the sponge because it doesn't dig in as much as your fingers do, and you get a smoother surface inside. Pushing out. So for the most part, for most of your pulling the clay up, you're making basically a cylinder, and it's just at the end that you really begin to make your shape. So I'm going to make this a bowl with a kind of spreading out. So now I'm pushing much harder with my inside hand and just using my outside hand as a guide. And the higher I go, the less pressure I use because there's way less clay there. Maybe one more pull and that'll be our shape. So here we go. More pressure with my left hand into my receiving right hand. And less pressure altogether as I'm going up. So there we are. And I squeeze out all the excess water that's in the bottom of the pot, because as it dries, that much extra water will make the clay weaker because it'll be more saturated with water. So you want to get rid of that. Okay, so there's a bowl. Sometimes it sticks, so you have to gently pull this back off. If you do it fast and hard, it'll knock your pot off center. I'm going to replace that bat with this bat because I'm going to show you the next stage, which is After this dries, like maybe by tomorrow, I'll take it off this bat, turn it upside down and trim it. So that's the next stage in wheel thrown things. So I'm going to show you that with a pot that I have ready. Clean it off a little. Oops. So this is going to be a mug. I threw it yesterday and it's now what's called leather hard, which means it's still very malleable, but it has some integrity and will hold its shape when I start trimming it. So once again, we have to center. So I did that just by tapping gently. And at some point, even if the outside is not totally regular, to be truly centered, there'll be a spot right there that's motionless, which is what I've got. So now I take 3 little lumps of clay and secure the pot to the bat. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
I think the volume's great. It's been perfect.
Okay, good. Just checking that you're there. Okay.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Speaking into the void can be a little troublesome sometimes.
So these are all my trimming tools. And now what I'm going to do is put a foot on the bottom of this pot, which just gives it a nice lift and a little gracefulness to the finished product. And also, if you happen to have too much clay on the bottom, it gets rid of some of that. So the first thing to do is make sure this is smooth and even. So you'll see some clay starting to peel off. Try and make this be as even and round as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to begin digging in with the tip of this to make the outside edge of the foot. And if I do it too hard, I'll knock the pot off center. So it becomes, working with clay is a real dance between what I want the clay to do and what the clay needs in itself and will allow. And that is just something that you learn over time for different things. Throwing this pot on the wheel, if I push too hard, too soon, it'll make it too thin there and too thick above it, and the whole thing will collapse. So you have to really sense how much elasticity is in the clay and work with that as your guideline, not just that you want to make 6 pots in the next 2 hours, so you better hurry up and get on with it. Okay, so now I'm starting to dig down the outside edge of my foot. That's good. Move it off a little bit by holding the trimming tool this way. And now I'm going to go in here and make the inside of the foot. And again, by experience, I tap this and I can tell how thin or thick it is by the sound. But this is still pretty thick, so I can go a little more. Now the sound sounds a little hollower to me, so I know that's enough. Don't do any more. And just one more go on the outside. And that's it. And then I take a tool and just write my name or initial on the bottom. Gently take this clay away so it doesn't pull the pot with it and misshape it. Turn it to dislodge the suction. And there we have a footed pot, almost ready to go, but we need a handle. So I have a few handles that I prepared over here to put on. So I take this needle tool and do what I call scoring, which is just making little cross hatches, because that puts burrs up that will help one piece of clay adhere to another. And you can also put a little gushy stuff. This is called slip. It's the potter's glue. And that also helps in the bonding. And here's a handle. And I'm going to gently but firmly push this into the clay. Gently twist it. Too fast and you'll break it. Instead of, you have to give it time to bend. And then I'm going to look to see if I'm on center or not here, which is now okay. So now I can push it a little more firmly. And the same for down here. I put my finger inside so it doesn't push the pot in while I'm adhering the handle to the pot. And there we have a mug. So now we're going to move over to my work table. And let me know if we're in good focus here.
And turn it a tiny smidge towards your table. That's perfect.
Okay. And so I'm going to show you how to do some slab work. This is a sculpture that I made out of slabs, but that's pretty elaborate. Today, we're going to make what I call the Demeter dish. This is probably my favorite thing that I make. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest. And to me, this is just an incredibly bountiful bowl to eat food out of. Take a slab of clay out. And I'm just going to begin rolling it, and this is going to be my model. So, good old-fashioned rolling pin. So I use these extra pieces of canvas because it's very handy for flipping the clay over. Because these will get wet after a while, the clay will begin to stick to it a little bit. So if I can keep flipping the canvas, it makes it a lot easier to pull the clay off without disfiguring it. So for one of these Demeter dishes, the clay should be about 1/8 of an inch thick, very fine. For the sculpture over here, the clay is much thicker. This is still really thick. It's okay over there, but. So I'll have to do this a few times, but here we'll do it for the first time. See how thick it is.
Hey, Amy, we're wondering, that plastic that you just put the extra clay into, can you move that slightly out of frame by any
Of course.
chance? Perfect. Thank you so much.
Is this in the way or is this okay?
Nope, that's all good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyhow, this is very thick, so we have a lot of rolling still to do. One more flip and I think we'll be okay. Mm. Okay. Okay, I might usually make it a little thinner, but just to keep things moving, I won't. So smoothing the edges, and then I'm going to carefully flip this over onto this plaster mold. Gently, if I pull it too hard, I'm going to rip the clay. I'm a little lopsided here. There. So here is another example of what I was talking about, of having to work with what the clay can do and not try and just push my will onto it. Because what I want to do is smooth this all down so that it's a perfect round. But if I try and do it all at once, the clay is not ready to give and it'll fold over and there'll be a little crease in what should be a nice smooth surface. So I have to do it gradually. Give the clay a chance to kind of let go. Over here, if I just went like that, I'd make a fold. So I have to just wait and do it gently. Same thing over here. And there we go, just what I wanted, but I had to wait for the clay to agree, so to speak. Smooth the edge a little bit, but the real smoothing will come tomorrow after this is leather hard, and I flip it over and sort of, right now this is a dome, but in order to make it sit for eating, I have to pat it down a little. So that'll be tomorrow. And now the last clay making process I'm going to show you is coil building, which this is sort of a combination of a little wheel thrown pot that I did coils on top and coils for feet and coils for the decoration. So I already rolled out some coils so that you don't have to sit around and watch, but I will roll one out because there are some things to be said about rolling a good coil. So here's my clay. And this might look like the simplest thing in the world, but again, if you push too hard because you want to get it done, you end up with lumpy coils, which can be fun for certain things, but to make a consistent pot, you have to wait for the clay to move with you. And depending on the size pot and what kind of effect you want, depends on how thick or thin you make your coils. Okay, so I had rolled out a slab. You can make a coil bottom, but then you have to really smooth it to make sure there's no holes in it if you're going to want it to be a vase or something like that. And then I should have a little glass of water over here, but I don't. But to make one piece of clay adhere to the next, a little water or a little scoring like I did with the handle of the pot is a good thing. So now when I come to here, where I'm going to go up one level, is a crucial spot to make sure that it's well joined. And at some point when I'm finished, to make sure there's no hole there from the rising up. So I'm kind of squaring the edge off of this coil, and I'll do the same here so that they adhere nicely to one another. So these coils are pretty soft. So I'm pushing down firmly, but if I push too hard, then I'll knock them out of shape. So it's got to be a balance. I think this one's too fat. Square it off. And now I'm going to begin to make it go out a little like the bowl I threw over there. So I'm putting each coil a little bit to the outside of the center of the one underneath it. Making sure everything's pretty firmly together. A little to the outside. And I've got one more, so we'll finish this pot with one more coil. Or maybe I'll just go to here and then make a little candy dish. So there we go. And I'll come back later and make sure the handle is still not wobbled to one side or the other. So that's, those are the three main techniques for clay work. And now I'm going to take you over to the kiln and glaze area and show you some things there. So. Can you see the kiln and the shelves?
Yep, excellent.
Okay. So when I finish a mug like the one I just did with you, I bring them over here. And at this stage, this is the clay is what we call leather hard. And it'll take a couple days for it to dry. Bigger pieces will take much longer. And when it's dry, it'll look like this. And this is called greenware. I guess green meaning raw or uncooked, put in the kiln. And so it goes in the kiln for the first firing. There's 2 firings for almost all pottery. Goes in the kiln and it'll come out looking like this, which is called bisqueware. So the first firing is called a bisque firing. And in this state, this is very fragile. This is not nearly as fragile as this is. If I knock into it accidentally with another pot, it'll crumble. This is quite solid, but it still will absorb moisture, which makes it receive the glaze and really bond with it. Put it back in the kiln, glazed. So this is what the glazing looks like. And back in the kiln for the glaze firing, and it comes out like this or this, and that's called stoneware. So in this kiln, the 2 firings, I call them, well, I don't call them, but the bisque firing is to what's called cone 05, and glaze firing is fired to cone 5. So cone 05 is actually a calibrated little ceramic cone that melts at 1880 degrees. And in the olden days, that's what potters had. And every cone is calibrated in 35-degree intervals. So there's cone 04, cone 05, cone 06, cone 10, like that. So in the old days, we used to sit a little cone just inside this peephole. And when it melted at 1880 degrees, you would know to shut your kiln off. But now we've advanced to wonderful digital kiln sitters. So I can just program that to fire to 1880 degrees and then it shuts off. It controls the rate of firing. So it's, you don't have to be standing here watching all the time. And the glaze firing in this kiln is to cone 5, which is 2160 degrees. And well, this kiln is called an oxidation kiln. Electric kilns are oxidation. And then besides that, there's, as I mentioned, the 2 other kilns that I've built in the past, a gas kiln and a wood burning kiln, are reduction kilns. So in an oxidation kiln, there's electrical elements that are heated up. And oxidation means that there's enough oxygen in the kiln atmosphere to combust all of the electricity. And so there's no residue, and it's a clean firing. In a gas kiln, and even more so in a wood burning kiln, which are both called reduction kilns, the oxygen is reduced for the purpose of having extra carbon floating around, because the gas or the wood does not completely combust. And that extra carbon adheres under heat to the glazes in the kiln and creates just wonderful subtle effects that doesn't happen in an electric kiln. So I'm going to show you. I hope you can see it through video. This is an oxidation vase, and it's very shiny, and there's not really any variety in the brownness of it. This is a gas kiln reduction plate. And again, I don't know how well you can see it. I mean, this is two different glazes, but this glaze has all kinds of unsolid variations in it, which make it way more interesting to the eye than just a solid sheet of grayish brown. And for me, this is the ultimate. This is wood burning. This is not a glaze. This just happened because of the extra ash burning around in the kiln and glopping there and adhering and creating a mystery. And this also is totally the result of the wood firing, not the result of how I glazed it. And I love that look. And now I'm going to show you a little, well, I'm going to put this here. Okay, now again, tell me if you can see over here.
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, so these are all my mixed up glazes. And this is a scale. These are my recipes for making different glazes, just like cake. 300 grams of kaolin, 150 grams of feldspar, 200 grams of zinc. All these different combinations and different proportions make different glazes happen. Some are shiny, some are very matte, some are splotchy. And so all kinds of different effects. And then the oxides like cobalt oxide, copper oxide, red iron oxide are the colorants. But most glazes, just as they are either off-white or beige. And then you add your colorants in varying combinations and you get blues and reds and oranges. And now I'm going to show you, I'm going to glaze just a lid for you. And stir it up a bit. So this glaze, when it's been fired in the kiln, is going to be this.
Amy, you are out of shot.
Oh, I think
at the
you're,
moment.
yeah, I didn't turn it, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is
Why don't
this
you tilt
okay?
us? Should we see the table in the kiln?
What?
Do you want us to see the table?
The table, yeah, that's where I'm gonna do
Yeah.
some glazing for you now. So that's okay?
Turn a little bit more. A little more? Okay, that should be great. Thank you.
Okay, so this color, which I guess you didn't get to see a minute ago, is going to turn into this after it has been fired. So pour a little bit to the inside of the pot. and dump it out. And then I'll actually just dip this into the whole glaze pot. And there, this is very thin. Usually it would be a little thicker. And then I'm going to touch it now, but usually you'd have to wait till it dries. And then any glaze that's on the bottom that is going to touch the shells inside the kiln has to be totally cleaned off, because glaze is made predominantly of silica, which is glass, and it melts, the silica melts at a very low temperature. So any glaze on here would melt and adhere to the shelves and ruin your shelf and ruin your pot. So very important to clean your bottoms off. And you can put 2 different glazes on top of each other and get certain effects. That's kind of it. In a minute, we can have questions and answers, but I'm going to just take you to look at the pots again, now that you know a little bit about glazing and shapes. And so here are mugs. Is this good? Can you see?
Yes, looks beautiful.
All right. Okay, so up top, this is an olive oil container, pitchers way up on top. These are honey pots with a bee. And here's lots of Demeter dishes. Salad bowls. This is actually a sauerkraut crock. Cheese plate, various sculptures. And I guess that's kind of everything, except for me to tell you that it would be wonderful to have people think about artists at Christmas time and buy locally. You can look me up, Amy Shinerock Pottery. It's not a website, but you can see lots of things about me, and I believe there will be an email connection for me there. And I also sell at a wonderful gallery called Gallery 57 in Malden, which is all local artists. And a little farther afield, I sell at a place that I've been selling for 15 years, I think, Hannah Grimes in Keene, New Hampshire, and Wren in Bethlehem, New Hampshire. And I'm also in the Fuller Craft Museum store. So thank you for listening. I hope I got some of you excited about pottery. And let's have questions and answers.
Great, thank you, Amy. I hope you can hear me all right.
Yes.
We did have a question from Anthony, and I just want to remind everyone that you can feel free to use the chat to type in your question, and I'll read it out on your behalf. So Anthony asked, when you want to have a piece wood fired, do you have a separate kiln in your house that you use, or do you bring your pieces to a different workshop?
I don't think there are any wood burning kilns in this area. It's probably pretty illegal to, unless you live out on a farm or something. So I haven't done wood fired potting in a really long time.
Got it.
I guess you could search it out and say wood fired pottery or wood fired kilns near me. And perhaps you could ferret one out.
Good to know. Okay. Diane asked, how many different glazes do you typically use? And do you have a favorite glaze that you've created?
I use pretty much, well, what is there over there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 glazes over there. So those are my standards. And there's probably 4, 5 of them at the most that I really use. There's an off-white. There's that pale blue that I said my was a sauerkraut crock because people like blue, so it sells well. So
Yeah.
I capitulate to good sales. And then there's this green glaze that I gave you a demonstration of. Where is it? This one, which is just quite a subtle, quiet color. And again, I'm still very influenced by Japanese pottery, which is very understated. Well, not all Japanese pottery, but the kind I really like. So I still tend towards the earthiness from which clay comes, as opposed to lots of pottery is very bright and has really, what's the word, transcended that quality of earthiness to be something very other. And that's not my kind of sense of what pottery is. So off-white, greens. I have a brown glaze that, hang on, I'll just get it. So this is an electric glaze, but I find it really beautiful. So can you see it?
It's a little shadowed. If you angle it ever so slightly, yeah, that looks beautiful.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite electric glazes. It's got a lot of clay dust in it right now. So I guess those are the main ones.
Great. Teresa asked, what kind of clay do you use?
The clay I use, I get still from a company that I used way back when we lived many other places. It's called Sheffield Pottery, and it's in Sheffield, Massachusetts. They have a huge amount of clays, different clays, and the ones that I mostly use for most of my wares called 4D3BM, and it's just the initials for this particular glaze. I mean clay, and it has, which again, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but it has the M at the end, 4D3BM, has manganese in it, granular manganese, and that means to the clay body is added the mineral manganese, and that makes little speckles happen that aren't part of the glaze, they're part of the actual clay. And again, with my love of subtle variety in the finish, that helps make a sort of a variety that wouldn't be there in a clay that did not have manganese or some other mineral like that in it.
Great, that is beautiful. Maria wants to know, do you ever use Raku or Raku? I'm not sure.
Raku.
Mhm.
I have in the past, and that actually probably could get away with doing in your backyard, even here. But it's not something that I particularly do. And it is it is a wood-fired kiln, but it's kind of low-fired. And after having had a wood-burning kiln, a real wood-burning kiln, I've just never been able to think about doing a Raku firing, but they are really lovely. And they also have those interesting kind of fire flashings and unusual, unpredictable elements to them.
Very cool. That seems to be it for the questions in the chat. We'll give it one more moment for anyone to type in any last minute thoughts. Thank you for this wonderful talk, Amy. It's been very enjoyable and it really was meditative. I really enjoyed it, and I think all of our audience has as well.
Well, we all need that these days, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad if I could offer that a little bit to everybody.
Yes,
And thank you for all your help. It was great.
Thank you again so much, Amy, for a really beautiful, magical, calming talk today. It was just really great. It was so soothing, so soothing. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everyone.